The grand saga of Archie Bunker's sudden evolution from a disgruntled loading dock worker into an equally disgruntled corporate magnate begins in the most romantic setting imaginable, an incredibly cheap motel room where the desk clerk asks if you need the room for more than 60 minutes. Archie and his remarkably patient wife, Edith, find themselves stranded in this $9 a night paradise while preparing to attend the funeral of Edith's beloved cousin Liz. Archie immediately complains about the view, which consists entirely of two pintos and a Toyota sitting in a bleak parking lot. As Edith tries to fix her face and Archie struggles with a black tie that looks more like a funeral shroud than business attire, the conversation turns to the philosophical weight of mortality. Archie drops some incredibly deep wisdom, noting that he hates looking at corpses because they never look back at you and you never really know what they are thinking. When Edith tries to inject logic into the conversation, Archie swiftly shuts her down, explaining that his thoughts are simply too deep for her to descend to his intellectual level. They debate the suddenness of Cousin Liz's departure, with Archie pointing out that everyone has to go eventually, and that Edith might even go today while he will graciously go much later on. The mourning process takes an awkward turn when Archie confesses that he once had a massive crush on the beautiful cousin Liz, and even kissed her once, though she refused to do anything else because she was a good egg. Archie then turns his rage toward the concept of euphemisms, demanding to know why people say passed away instead of croak or die. Edith, taking this advice entirely too literally, decides to tell Archie how wonderful he is right now before he croaks, which only results in Archie ordering her to scrape a spot off his tie using her fingernails without turning the tie into Swiss cheese. As amidst the romantic ambiance of the Gideon Bible and thoughts of whether deceased acquaintances are currently mingling in heaven, Archie shifts his focus to the only thing that truly matters to a grieving relative, the potential inheritance. He begins interrogating Edith about Cousin Liz's finances, assuming that 25 years as a schoolteacher must have yielded a massive stash of hidden cash. Edith tries to explain that teachers do not actually make a fortune, pointing to their son-in-law, Mike, as living proof of educational poverty, but Archie refuses to let reality ruin his golden dreams. Upon arriving at the actual apartment of the deceased, Archie immediately begins inspecting the premises like an insurance adjuster looking for valuable assets. He encounters Veronica, the schoolteacher, who shared the apartment with Liz for 2 decades. While Edith awkwardly tries to compliment the funeral by saying everyone seemed to enjoy it, Archie focuses on the silver tea set sitting in the corner. This tea set has been in Edith's family for a century, tracing a wildly complex ancestral path from great-grandmothers to uncles that leaves Archie entirely dizzy. Archie estimates the sterling silver must be worth at least $2,000 and immediately begins planning a luxury vacation to California, funded by the spoils of the deceased. However, the plot thickens when Veronica requests a private moment with Edith to discuss the tea set. In a quiet bedroom, Veronica gently explains that the tea set represented a sacred daily ritual between her and Liz. As Edith listens with her usual naive innocence, Veronica drops a massive bombshell, explaining that her relationship with Liz was not just a simple roommate situation, but a deep, passionate 25-year marriage of minds and hearts. Edith initially struggles to comprehend the logistics of 2 women being married, but once the reality sets in, her heart overflows with pure empathy rather than judgment. She realizes how painful it must have been for them to keep their love completely hidden from a judgmental world just to protect their teaching jobs. In an act of grand generosity, Edith declares that Veronica is the true next of kin and insists she keep the precious silver. When Archie bursts back into the room shouting about how they are rich and headed to California, Edith calmly informs him that they are leaving empty-handed. A massive domestic dispute erupts right there in the home of the deceased as Archie learns the truth about Cousin Liz's alternative lifestyle. Archie is absolutely horrified, experiencing a profound existential crisis over the fact that a deviation was running wild on Edith's side of the family. He refuses to accept that 2 women could love each other the same way he and Edith do, demanding that Edith march back in there and seize the silver legally. Archie attempts to use legal intimidation, threatening to take Veronica to court and let a judge decide the fate of the tea set. Veronica quietly admits she cannot go to court because the public exposure would cost her her job. This gives Archie a villainous burst of leverage as he realizes he could ruin her career, but Edith steps in as the moral conscience of the household. She delivers a powerful guilt trip, asking Archie if he truly wants to be the kind of mean person who leaves a lonely woman with nothing. Defeated by his wife's superior moral standing, Archie backs down and tells Veronica they will not see her in court. He cannot resist offering some unsolicited lifestyle advice, though suggesting that a good-looking woman like Veronica should simply find a nice guy and turn herself around to fix her situation. Archie leaves the apartment convinced he has successfully set society back on the right tracks, even managed to sneak a pair of sugar tongs into his pocket as a small consolidation prize for losing the California trip. Back in their own home, the focus shifts from stolen silverware to a battle over a weekend fishing trip. Archie arrives home early, exploding with excitement, because his friend Barney has offered to drive them up to a modern cabin in New Hampshire complete with indoor plumbing, so Edith does not have to do a midnight dash across a cold yard. The only catch is that they must be packed and waiting on the curb at 6:30 in the morning. Edith drops a massive wrench in his plans by announcing that she has already volunteered their home for the wedding of Mrs. Talley and Mr. Hooper, two elderly residents from the Sunshine Home. Not only that, but she has made a binding four-part promise that requires Archie to serve as the best man while she sings romantic ballads. Archie is completely outraged, demanding that she call the home and tell them no dice because the fishing trip is absolutely free. A hilarious historical argument ensues covering everything from why they named their daughter Gloria instead of Jeanette to whose fault it was that they moved to Queens instead of New Jersey. Archie tries to issue a strict ultimatum, stating that if she is not ready at dawn, he will leave her behind. Edith matches his fury, reminding him that she works just as hard as he does, and if he walks out on her tomorrow, he can just keep on walking forever. Desperate to save his vacation, Archie tries to manipulate Barney into delayed departure. He invites Barney over and showers him with uncharacteristic declarations of love before casually suggesting they leave at noon instead. Barney refuses to blow half the weekend for two octogenarians until Archie resorts to political blackmail. Archie brings up a highly classified incident from a mid-August convention in Pittsburgh involving a midnight swim, an indoor pool, and completely unclothed individuals. Terrified that his wife Blanche will discover the truth, Barney immediately folds and agrees to shift the departure time to exactly noon. With the vacation salvaged, Archie turns his attention to the wedding itself, acting like a hyperactive drill sergeant trying to speed-run a marriage ceremony. He finds the 84-year-old groom hiding in a closet, suffering from a severe case of premarital cold feet. Archie delivers an incredibly awkward pep talk about how marriage is just like riding a bicycle and that this wedding is a great way to prove to the neighborhood that the groom isn't a fragile old man. When the ceremony begins, Archie badgers the poor reverend to skip the long theological passages because the elderly couple might literally need a nap before the sermon ends. He rushes through the vows, demands the ring, pushes the couple together, and pronounces them man and wife in record time before tossing a bouquet and handing the house keys to the ministers so they can flee to the waiting car. The chaos peaks when they realize the groom has locked himself back in the closet, refusing to come out unless he can join the fishing trip. Barney absolutely refuses to host a six-person excursion until Archie drops another subtle hint about the Pittsburgh convention out the window to Blanche. The groom is instantly invited along, and the bizarre entourage finally speeds off toward the lake. The final act of Archie's chaotic journey brings him to the ultimate test of survival entrepreneurship. Having finally achieved his dream of owning a neighborhood tavern named Archie's Place, he prepares for the grand opening night by dressing up in a suit that makes him look like a low-budget talk show host. He immediately starts barking orders at his staff, firing his longtime bartender Harry and assistant Carlos within the first 5 minutes over minor creative differences and a broken barstool spring. Stranded without a staff on the biggest night of his life, Archie is forced to recruit his own family. Edith becomes the overly enthusiastic hostess, Mike begrudgingly goes behind the bar with a cocktail guide, and Gloria takes over as a waitress who is strictly forbidden from bending over too far in front of the customers. The opening night quickly devolves into a comedy of errors as Mike struggles to decipher a recipe for a Harvey Wallbanger, eventually deciding to just mix 3 random whiskeys with juice and serve it in a dark glass. Archie tries to project the image of a sophisticated tycoon mingling with church organists who drink heavily and locals celebrating cotton anniversaries. His old boss, Mr. Sanders, arrives unexpected and accuses Archie of faking a sickness to skip his shift at the loading dock. In a glorious burst of pride, Archie officially quits his corporate job, declaring himself a free businessman. However, the reality of small business ownership hits hard when a bill collector arrives demanding $2,800 for a refrigeration unit or face immediate repossession. Archie attempts to lie his way out of the debt, inventing a tragic backstory about 5 pregnant unmarried daughters, but the collector knows Archie's entire life history and refuses to budge. As the bar empties out and his friends abandon him for a rival establishment down the street, Archie spirals into panic. A regular customer offers him a mysterious prescription pill to cure his depression, and Archie, in a moment of sheer desperation, swallows it down. The upper immediately kicks in, sending Archie into a manic frenzy of grand economic delusions. He begins pacing the floor at 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to force an exhausted Edith to dance with him before announcing his plans to paint the front porch chartreuse. By the next evening, the substance-fueled madness reaches its peak as Archie hallucinates a global empire. He stands before his family, spinning wild corporate dreams of rebranding the tavern into Archie's Golden Arches, boasting a billboard that reads over 1 billion belts of booze bought. He envisions gas station pumps that dispense premium Scotch, bourbon, and champagne directly into glasses. He pitches an absurd concept called booze and snooze, where customers are charged to sleep off their drinks in the back of the bar. His mind races across Russia, China, and the North Pole as he maps out a multinational saloon syndicate that will make them multimillionaires. Then just as suddenly as the delusion arrived, the emotional crash hits. The manic energy evaporates, leaving Archie standing in the center of his empty bar, looking at his worn hands. The facade of the tough, all-knowing patriarch completely crumbles. In a beautiful moment of raw honesty, Archie turns to Edith and confesses that he has absolutely no idea what he is doing. He breaks down, admitting that he was wrong, that he should have listened to her warnings about the high risks of the bar business, and that he only wanted to build something big so they could finally escape the grinding routine of the working class. Edith wraps her arms around her weeping husband, offering unconditional love and reassurance that everything will be completely fine. The grand corporate empire vanishes into the night, leaving behind 2 ordinary people holding on to each other in the quiet safety of a neighborhood saloon.